Huh.
Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Sports Social, now on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The countdown is on to Super Bowl 58, and you can follow all the action on the Sports Social Podcast Network. I'm Richard Graves. With my podcast, Graves on Gridiron, I'll bring you daily updates from inside the team camps, speaking to players, coaches, NFL legends and more, building up to the greatest show on earth. It's the biggest night of the American sporting calendar, so don't miss Graves on Gridiron, daily from Vegas throughout Super Bowl week, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Serie A Chronicles is a Serie A Chronicles production.
Jannik Sinner vince l'Australian Open 2024, è tutto vero Barbara?
È tutto vero!
Un italiano torna a vincere un torneo del Grande Slam quasi 48 anni dopo Adriano Panatta nel singolare maschile. Partita fantastica per merito, grande merito di Daniil Medvedev. Sinner è stato super a non demordere perché
Winner, Jannik Sinner. It's the Italian football chat we're looking forward to here on Serie A Chronicles, but I can't help but start with the Australian Open winner, Jannik Sinner, this weekend. Italy's first men's Grand Slam winner for, is it 48 years, I think it was? I may have got that number wrong because I didn't write it down. And I think which had a lot of us captivated through the weekend. Nikki Bandini here. I have with me, as usual, Mina Rizuki and Patrick Kendrick. Guys, did either of you watch the tennis, or is that just not on your radar?
I did watch it. I absolutely loved it, and especially given that Sinner was trailing by 2-0 and then came roaring back. And that's what I like most about tennis, is the way the momentum shifts. It looked like he was completely out of it, and then suddenly you win back a set. Once you win the fourth set, you feel like it's only ever going to be one winner, and it was Jannik Sinner. And he showed a lot more personality than I think we'd necessarily seen from him before, and brought together the whole country. And Italians are very proud of their sporting achievements, and it's nice for them to have some success in men's singles tennis as well.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if I feel like we've talked about tennis a little bit before, you and I, so I think you do enjoy tennis. I don't know if you watch this one. I think what I find so thrilling with tennis is that thing of momentum that happens through a game when you can be 2 sets down and you've been playing for 2 hours, and then that moment happens, you get the break, and it's like, okay, we might be done here in 10 minutes, or we might have another 2 hours of this still to go.
I sort of just love the fact that it's not Berrettini, because for so long we've just spoken about Berrettini, and then Jannik Sinner has just been playing really well and no one's really thought of him. Understandably, Berrettini reached the Wimbledon final, which was like a magnificent year for football, for sport in general in Italy. It was the year that we won the Euros, and it seemed like, we were crushing it in the Olympics. But he won the Davis Cup. He's really been growing. And I agree with you. I think it's a psychological benefit, right? It's about momentum. But staying in the game when you go 2 sets down and then coming back, that is another level of psychological strength. And I think it's very rare to do that. And Djokovic is really famous for it. So it's amazing that he was able to do it to Djokovic as well. To win the final, but also to defeat Djokovic. And he's done it now several times. It's just a shame that all these great tennis players are Milan fans, but never mind.
Well, it is extraordinary. I mean, we should get onto the foot, but it is extraordinary knocking out Djokovic, king of hard court, in the semi-final. And then Medvedev, who on hard court in Grand Slams had won 50 out of 51 matches in which he wins the first set, to be 2 sets down and do it. Jannik Sinner really did do something else. But to make my totally smooth and natural segue to the football. It's actually not even that hard this time because this has been such a big story in Italy that all of the football managers have been fielding questions about Jannik Sinner as well. So let's go to Max Allegri, who said before Juventus game against Empoli, well, we're clearly the Jannik Sinner of the title race because we're younger than Inter. But they couldn't get the job done against Empoli this weekend. 1-1 draw in a game that was conditioned by Arkadiusz Milik's early red card, but still a game that they had in hand after Dusan Vlahovic put them up in the second half, wasn't it, when he scored his goal, and which you feel like was a little moment that let slip away from them. Obviously, next weekend is a Derby d'Italia. Mina, do you think this is a big slip, or is it a nothing moment in a long season, just another little break of serve that you can bounce back from?
I wish. I don't think so. I'll be honest with you. This is a ridiculously good Inter side. And I do think it is about the whole point that everyone thinks that Juventus has potentially a good chance of really going for the Scudetto is because they're not playing all the matches. But it's actually Inter that have come back from a Supercoppa, and it was Juventus that dropped points. Listen, obviously we know it was conditioned by Milik. We know potentially that had Milik not been sent off, Juventus would have probably won this. But we can talk about the goal being scored, which was, from a corner, because Empoli have been hideous when it comes to really set pieces and dealing with them in general, and second balls in general has been one of their weaknesses going forward this season, and it's something that Davide Nicola has to address. But what was so interesting is how this man continues to ensure that relegation battlers somehow find a way out of this. Like I said, Milik made this a lot easier, but Baldanzi I think that all of us have been waiting for Baldanzi to really show his ability, and he's obviously had injuries going forward. But this was just such a great moment for him. And what was really irritating is that Juve, considering everything that they had achieved, if this was October, I would have totally understood the 1-1 or potentially even been waiting for a loss. But this is now a team that has started to score a lot of goals, that has found its confidence, that feels genuinely comfortable. So I'm really surprised with the fact that they decided to go from a 3-5-2 to a 3-5-1 and not take a few more risks going forward, not throw in the likes of Yildiz and take off the hideous Kostic how many times.
Surprised at Max Allegri not doing the most
ridiculous. Yes, maybe even for I know it's crazy. But I would have thought that at least not bring Yildiz in with only 8 minutes, as in throw in, sorry, it wasn't 8 minutes, he had 12 minutes or whatever it is, but throw him in earlier. I just find that really, it's still Empoli. I don't understand, choosing to go and not try to be. I understand the first half, I get it. You want to, you close it out, but you've gone 1-0 down and you think, well, I don't need to take any risks. I understand that. As soon as the equalizer goes in, change everything. That is what I find so irritating. You have the squad for it, force them to defend. That I found very, very irritating, and very irritating that I have to watch Kostic play. I do not understand how this man continues to be a Juventus player. I honestly have no idea how this man is. At this point in time, I might even miss Quadrado.
I was wondering where Kostic might sit in the hierarchy now of Juventus villains, with Pjanic, who's been there before, Dybala, I wasn't a fan of when he was there. No. I think Kostic might be on the way to superseding them.
Head to SerieAChronicles.com/Patreon now and subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi Patreon membership with a free 7-day trial. Get early access to every full-length episode and voice note before the rest of the world. Plus, all episodes are 100% ad-free. And you get bonus Patreon-only exclusive episodes, video episodes, and behind-the-scenes extras. Also, be sure to join the new chat community in the Patreon app and chat with fellow subscribers.
Patrick, I will just say quickly before I come to Patrick, to just make it explicit for anyone who didn't know, Empoli was second bottom of the table. Mina just mentioned it. Davide Nicola has come in. They won their first game with him in charge last round against Monza 3-0. So that was a nice bounce back for them. And Tommaso Baldanzi, who Mina also just mentioned, was supposed to be on his way to Roma. Empoli, I was going to say born and raised, I might be overstating it, but Empoli Academy graduate scoring a brilliant goal. And now that Roma deal looks like it might not be happening. But Patrick, yes, sorry to interject there. I don't know if you want to come back at me or...
No, absolutely. Yeah, it has hit a snag, that deal. which is a bit of a shame because that was the entire narrative I led with when he equalised, actually, was the fact that he was on his way to Roma. But there we have it. Yeah, there was talk of an 18-month loan deal, I think, as well. But I think one thing that has come out of this is that if Empoli have any chance of staying up, they need to keep Baldanzi at least until the end of the season. Whether they'll manage to do that or not remains to be seen. But that's always been part of their model. I think it's good to talk about Empoli as well, because they're always run the same way for more than 3 decades now. Fabrizio Corsi, the president, they develop players in-house, academy products, and they sell them on when the time is right to keep the club running financially, and they're not afraid to drop out of the division. But this is slight change in tack in terms of a new coaching change to the third coach of the season, and Davide Nicola's now taken 4 points from 6 to start. And I thought they did well. I think they made the most of the sending off, which was 17 minutes into the game. It's one of those awkward ones where Milik's touch is heavy. In a split second, he tries to atone and then actually ends up exacerbating the problem by lunging in with his studs up, and it was always going to be upgraded from a yellow to a red card.
Everyone happy with that red card? Everyone thinks that's...
Yeah,
I think so, yeah. In the modern game, with the speed and the force with which he challenged Cherry and caught him around the ankle. So, but yeah, I think it's... I agree with Mina. I think Yildiz was a curious omission. Strange to leave him out from the start, given how well he's sort of unlocked Vlahovic, which we've been saying in recent weeks. And it backfired. It might have backfired anyway, even if Milik had stayed on the pitch. Who knows? Because we don't know how much Juventus would have created. But I think there was certainly a case for Yildiz to come on earlier. But unfortunately, it was slightly ironic, wasn't it? You needed Yildiz on the pitch to try and win the game, but equally you didn't want to then lose a point, and you were hopeful of... Juventus didn't create a great deal. They scored a scrappy goal from a corner, and I think the entire team selection backfired because in a parallel universe, maybe... Yeah, I think so. I think if Yildiz starts, Milik doesn't play, Milik doesn't get sent off, and it's very easy in the benefit of hindsight. But
yeah, exactly. But don't you think that, I mean, considering that Inter's coming up, that this was a chance... Like, Milik has done well in the Coppa Italia, for example. I feel like he had a hat-trick not long ago. Do you not think that he also deserves... You think it's Empoli, you think, I don't want anything to happen to Yildiz so that he's available for the next game.
Who did Milik score a hat-trick playing alongside? Yildiz. It wasn't Vlahovic.
So you think... Yeah, but you're not going to bench Vlahovic, right?
Well, I don't think Milik and Vlahovic work together. I don't think I've ever seen any evidence of that. So on that basis, I think if you want to rest Yildiz, which is, again, quite a statement from Allegri, if he's saying, I'm going to, he rested Danilo, who was a booking away from suspension. Mm-hmm. Maybe that was a risk as well, because that's, again, a Pyrrhic victory. Okay, Danilo's available for the Derby d'Italia, but maybe with a player like him on the pitch, he might be able to grab a goal, or he might actually stop you from conceding that equaliser. I think it was risky team selection from Allegri, who's got... Has he? Which ones?
I can't remember them because I'm not somebody who remembers things very well at all. That's why I have to do so much research when it comes to what we're doing about the Derby d'Italia. But I don't feel like he's been at his best this season, in all honesty. Danilo, right. I haven't seen him. I feel like Bremer is somebody I really trust. I haven't been able to trust Danilo, but I can't off the top of my head tell you where I think that. I don't think his absence, or rather his presence, makes that much of a difference, actually. I don't believe that.
Well, it's partly tactical, isn't it? Because Danilo's maybe more of a creator from the back. He's someone who brings the ball out a bit more, and I can see that as an art. I'm not particularly taking a side on this one. I'm just sort of thinking in terms of what style of thinking gives you. Because I was sort of curious. I was curious to know how, I guess, both of you think that Allegri could have reacted differently to the red card. I mean, Mina, you've talked about wanting those substitutions to come quicker after the goals conceded, and I definitely think that is super valid, because they, frankly, at 1-1, Empoli looked more likely to win than Juventus did. Empoli created more chances from there on out. And I guess that sort of question, still from what you said, Mina, about going to the more defensive approach, it hangs in my mind. Like, what could you do in the 18th minute after seeing that player sent off? I mean, do you think you make a first half substitution to do something differently? Do you think Yildiz should come into the game for a midfielder? Like, is there something you think that you can do to be more aggressive in this game? Or do you think it was mostly right up until that goal gets conceded?
Here's the thing. I mean, a lot of the time I agree with Allegri. I don't always agree. I think I probably would have waited till halftime before I made any huge adjustments, just to see how the game was going. Just
not
to
doing a full and saying, right, you're off even though you barely
started. Also, I mean, I sort of love people who do make quick choices like that. Zidane is great at doing that, which is one of the reasons why I like Zidane so much. Allegri makes his decisions very late. It's like he plays one game for 70 minutes and another game for the last 20 minutes. So here's the thing. I would have waited. He waited and didn't change anything, right? But then I probably wouldn't have when Vlahovic comes on. If I'm a goal up, then I don't need to change anything at that point. Having said that, when the equaliser came in, I would have probably changed everything then. And I think that there was enough time with 20 minutes to really try to change everything quickly. And it's not like he made his changes much later, but I feel like Empoli were really getting into the game. So perhaps even before the equaliser, I would have started to introduce something to ensure that Empoli is now defending more than they're attacking. This is still a team that I think away from home had scored 5 goals. So I don't understand how they are now being allowed to, I mean, I guess, let them go for it because they can't score goals anyway, except that it's a Davide and Nicola side. Why not take a few risks? Why not show this team that they can go forward and attack? And I think from Allegri, from a psychological point of view, this team was really running confident. And by sort of telling them that you have to go back and defend, takes away something from that. It's like they're not good enough to win against an Empoli side. And I think that is where he went wrong. Because from a psychological point of view, you've just taught your team that when you go 1-0 down, and even when when you've gone one man down, and even when you've gone 1-0 up, you're not taking any risks because this team is not good enough to take risks. And that's how I would understand it if I'm a Juve player. And that's what I don't like about it.
I think it's definitely been interesting the last month. We've talked about it. Juventus no longer winning a corto muso. They've been scoring heaps and heaps of goals. Dusan Vlahovic with this goal, I think it's 7 in his last 6 Serie A games and a couple of assists in there as well. It has been a different approach. I guess the thing I sort of come back to off this one, given the sending off, Patrick, still, I'll be honest, I put my cards on the table. This doesn't affect how I expect the Derby d'Italia to go at all. Whether or not I expect Juventus to win that, we'll talk about it a bit later, but this doesn't really change anything for me. This to me is, in a season, you're going to get games where you end up on 10 men early and it doesn't work out for you. That's kind of how I feel about this game.
I agree in some ways and less so in others. I think if Juventus had won, then I think they would have been ultra conservative in the Derby d'Italia in the sense that they would have gone 4 points clear. Maybe Inter still would have won in Florence anyway and would have closed back to within 1 point. But I feel like Juventus would have felt comfortable playing for a draw at San Siro. I think now that Inter have actually gone top, I think Juventus, the onus is on them to try and win that game, especially conscious of the fact that Inter will have a game in hand. But I think Allegri, I think it's quite ironic. Allegri, in constantly trying to play these mind games against Inter, I think has actually become too hung up on what Inter are doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he was happy with the draw. I honestly think in his mind, he was thinking, we go 2 points clear. It's an extra point on the board. We keep our unbeaten run going. We don't get a second defeat of the season. And there's no guarantee that Inter will win in Florence. Well, the problem is it's backfired because, I think if they win 1-0 with 10 men, that's absolutely perfect. I think when they go 1-1, he's then thinking, we'll stick to what we know. If we can score a goal, great. Maybe a set piece will come along again. If we don't, then we still get a point on the board and we keep our unbeaten stretch going. It's just that Sassuolo defeat. So I think there was a little bit of pragmatism that kicked in, but I think it might end up costing them over the long run, be it this time next week if we're talking about an Inter win in the Derby d'Italia, or come the end of the season if they're a point or two behind Inter and you think back, could you have been more aggressive against Empoli and gone a little bit more aggressive? So yeah, I'm with Mina on that. I think Yildiz, or at least another attacking change, might have given them a chance to win the game. And if you lose it going for it, then so be it. But we didn't see it. And there was also that last kick of the game, which reminded me, it was eerie how similar it was to Szczęsny and Gatti in the defeat against Sassuolo when Szczęsny played that really lazy square ball and Gatti scored the own goal. And again, it was Szczęsny who just played the ball erroneously, and then the full-time whistle went just as Cancellieri pounced on the loose ball. So again, maybe if the game had been extended for another 10 seconds, Juventus might have even lost anyway.
Well, to say quickly for anyone who's not got the table in front of them, so Juventus, if they'd won that game, as Patrick just touched on, Juventus would have gone ahead of Inter again with their 2 games in hand. They didn't win it. Inter did beat Fiorentina, which we'll get to in just a second. And so the weekend ends with Inter 1 point ahead of Juventus at the top of the table with still 1 game in hand. The thing that I did think has been quite funny with Juventus and Allegri before we move on from them. These press conferences with we're Jannik Sinner, with the cops and robbers analogy that we talked about last week and the provocative nature of that. I'm enjoying Allegri a lot. I also think it's not really landing because Inzaghi has gone both times. Yeah, I don't think that was rude. I think that's fine. He hasn't bitten back at all. So when Allegri is there at his press conference going, oh, but I can't say that about us being Sinner because they're a bit touchy. And you think, actually, Inzaghi hasn't been touchy about it at all. He's kind of just gone, yeah, okay, let him say what he wants. But let's get to Inter. They did beat Fiorentina 1-0. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Can I just say, because I've been particularly harsh on Vlahovic. So I just want to say that even when he didn't have somebody playing close to him, even if you're just seeing right now 6 goals in 4 games. He's been really fabulous. I mean, a lot of that has to do with Yildiz playing next to him, which he didn't have in this particular match. But I sort of want to give him his props because his reaction times, it's so funny when you start to score goals, how much all of a sudden you start to really feel confident and then you start scoring goals all the time. And this particular match, it was just quick, fast reactions, something that I always remember from Vlahovic when he was at Fiorentina, less so when he was actually when he first arrived at Juventus and he scored in the Champions League. Do you remember? It was like, oh, there's Vlahovic, there he is exploding. And there's a lot about him that, let's say I haven't liked since at Juventus, but I'm sort of really just want to give him his props just because I think he scored a lot of goals. And right now he seems to be one of those guys that's like really gunning for showing himself and really proving himself. And it's a shame because I really think this was a game in which he could have gone another brace had he been allowed to. So I just, interesting to see him sort of start to show us who Vlahovic really is and make people, I guess, realize that we should have never criticized him. I hope he keeps it up, though. So.
The real acid test now is San Siro. I don't think he's ever scored at San Siro. Precisely. So if he can change that statistic, then, Juventus might be able to win.
I thought it was a very Vlahovic goal as well. As Mina said, reaction time, sharpness, presence in the box, that's the stuff he does well. The technique isn't perfect. It's not the cleanest strike, but it gets in the net. And I think that's actually what he's always been at his best. It's not about being the cleanest, the most technically perfect, but about being present and switched on those moments. Completely agree. His confidence is up and could be a key factor in the title race if he can score at San Siro. Speaking of, I'm just going to keep manufacturing these segues. You can't stop me. Speaking of confidence in front of goal, how different might Fiorentina be if they had a striker who had that sort of confidence in front of goal? I thought early on against Inter, they looked far the more dangerous team. They did get the ball in the net once, disallowed for offside. And Zola, though, for me, still in front of goal, lacks that killer confidence. And I don't know if you saw, actually, friend of the show, Matteo Benetti, posted a supercut of Nico Gonzalez's penalties because, of course, what happens in this game is Inter go ahead from a Lautaro Martinez header and Fiorentina have a chance to equalise 8 from the spot. Nico Gonzalez's penalties this season all look basically exactly the same. So Jan Sommer, when he said he did his homework, did not have to do a lot of homework to stop that penalty. Just look at any of the penalties Gonzalez has taken this season. But yes, I thought Inter were outplayed in this game. I thought Fiorentina were the better side. And it's not the first time this season that I've watched a Fiorentina game and thought that, and they haven't ended up winning it. That's not really a question, if anyone wants to come back off it.
Yeah, I agree to an extent, but then I was watching back the highlights, and actually the big chances fell the way of Inter, to be honest, when you think about it. I mean, there was an opportunity for Carlos Augusto. Farioni chased back and cleared it away off the line. Thuram was through on goal and just randomly slipped over. Lautaro shot one over from the edge of the box. Fratesi had a shot from inside the box. Inter, had they been as clinical as we have seen them, then they could have been far and away out of sight by half-time. But I agree. I mean, there was a risky ball from Sommer earlier on. He played a square ball and Bonaventura cut it out. And then Nzola was offside. Nzola was slightly offside, as you said, when he had a goal disallowed. There were chances as well for Fiorentina. And they just haven't been able to touch upon the right man. Last season, it was Luka Jovic, Artur Cabral. This time around, it's Beltran, who's got 6 goals, 4 in the league. It's not really enough. Admittedly, you'd make allowances for him because he's in his first season in Italian football. And the Florentine press in particular, every time there's a big game for Fiorentina, they say, well, Batistuta took half a season to get going and then he scored a big goal against so-and-so and never looked back after that. And they were beating that drum again. And again, it didn't happen. And I don't know, Nzola as well, he's a pupillo of Italiano. He's one of his, he's a little teacher's pet. He played with him in Trapani, played with him at Spezia. So it's the 3rd club that he's coached him at. So clearly he's actually gone to management and said, I'd like him to be here. I thought he actually offered a lot in terms of his hold-up play. Stefan de Vrij had a torrid time, couldn't get near him every time he was winning the 50-50s. But you need someone working off them to score the goals, and that man all too often has been Bonaventura, nearly scored in the first half. And Nico Gonzalez, who they've missed through injury, that's the irony. Actually, when he came on, he looked really exciting. He'd never missed a penalty in Italian football, but it was Jorginho all over again. It was cold sweats, remembering how Italy didn't go to the World Cup because of Jan Sommer and Jorginho and that staggered stutter step penalty. And Sommer's doing something right for sure. And I think it's one of those when you just realise that it is your year. I got that sense with Inter on Sunday night. I think.
Really? See, I think I almost felt the opposite about this, and we're going to have to get into a conversation about the Scudetto, the Derby d'Italia, and what that can mean for the Scudetto. I really wasn't convinced by Inter in this game, and I think Inter have been brilliant so often. I'm not trying to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater and say suddenly I think this team's not good. I think they've been the best team in the league, but I think if you're Juventus, you look at this game and go, okay, they're not unbeatable. That's not a team that can't be got at. That's not a defense that looks as settled and confident as it has done in recent times. That's not a team that looks as ruthless.
But the other side of the coin to that, Nikki, is they still won. They still kept a clean sheet. And if you look at those two games recently, Verona on Epiphany, 6th of January, Fratesi scores late. Verona get a penalty after Inter should really have scored on the counter, but it would have been brought back anyway. Mm-hmm. And Henry misses. And then Fiorentina get a penalty to equalise, and Nico Gonzalez has it saved. Even when there are teams that are able to take points off Inter, it's not happening.
Yeah, but you can say the same thing about Juventus when they went to play Fiorentina, and Fiorentina took 25 shots, but Juventus won.
Fiorentina never looked like scoring in that game. It was just sort of aimless.
The point is that Fiorentina aren't Juventus. That's why the Derby d'Italia is different. Like, that's why next week is different. Because
so you're saying that Inter's frailties could be exploited by Juventus?
Yes. Fiorentina is what I'm saying. Yeah.
I think, Nikki, what you're trying to say is, if anything, they didn't show themselves to be this team that can't be beaten.
And it's the perfect time to play them.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest with you, it's weird because the first thing I noticed was that this is a league that was named as the best league by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics, no matter how much you laugh at that.
Represent.
And I was really happy with that. But then I saw all the penalties this weekend and I was like, really, this is the best league? We can't even know.
5 penalties, 5, most since 1960 in a single weekend.
I mean, have you ever seen anything more embarrassing than this? And I don't know how to explain. This is the 16th penalty that Jan Sommer has now saved in overall in his career, I feel. And I just don't understand how you would possibly think, let's copy Jorginho, because that's exactly the reason why we didn't go to the World Cup. But sure, let's do that, And I also feel like what I'm really surprised about Italiano is that I think it's time to hire somebody to figure out how to score penalties or work with the team. If Liverpool are hiring a throw-in coach, then maybe you need to hire a guy who understands penalties at this point. But I agree with you, and I understand, like Patrick was saying, the bigger chances fell to Inter. And he's right, the bigger chances did fall to Inter. I don't know how much you guys believe in XG, because when it came to XG, I think a lot of the time these statistics are more annoying than they're right, because at the end of the day, you can create a lot, you just don't take your opportunities, you're still a failure, At the end of the day, like if we look at, 1982 and the Brazil-Italy game, I think Brazil had 75,000 chances, but at the end of the day, Italy knew how to convert those chances into actual goals. But in terms of XG, Fiorentina created a hell of a lot more than what Inter managed. The problem is that they don't have a Lautaro Martinez, and I don't understand. It's a little bit like PSG. It's like, it's so clear what you're missing is a great midfielder, and they never buy a great midfielder. They just buy all these attackers. And what's so clear about Fiorentina is that don't buy anything, just buy a great forward. And that's the only thing I would want them to do in this position. But yes, we talked about another clean sheet,
isn't it? It's just always easier said than done. Strikers cost hundreds of millions because they're very hard to find good, reliable ones. You've already hinted at it, Mina. For our Patreon listeners, we are going to have a retrospective on Derby d'Italia games that have influenced the Scudetto. So there's going to be a nice bonus episode coming up on that. So look out for that later this week. I think we should have a conversation now about what we do expect from that Derby d'Italia, the one coming up. But just quickly to before we close out, talking about this game specifically, I find this stuff tedious sometimes, but this was another game that was influenced by some big refereeing decisions. Lautaro's goal.
Oh, you went there.
Oh, we should go there.
I think we have to. At the Lautaro's goal, he has an arm out on Parisi, which you can see Parisi's a bit off balance already. For me, it's enough on the borderline that it's okay. Parisi is, as I say, he's already losing his balance.
No foul.
But I certainly can see how, at a first glance, it looks a bit more of a foul than it does when you look it back. Obviously, there was the penalty given against Inter for Jan Sommer, which, again, first glance, I felt a little bit sorry for him. He does touch the ball first. Then he goes through into the face of Nzola. I find these ones hard, even with the rule book in front of me, to know what you're supposed to fall on them, because where's the line between dangerous play and legitimate going for the ball, which I think Sommer was. Having said that, Inter did have one which I thought they did get away with in the first half, which was Bastoni holding Ranieri in the box. So perhaps you could even those two out. 9 penalties for Inter, by the way, this season. None in this game, but they've had 9, which is more than anyone else. Are we living in Marotta League? I have to ask it because Twitter likes to ask it. Are we living in Marotta League? I want to know.
No. I think the short answer is no. I think if you analyse each and every one of those penalties, pretty much all of them are penalties. I know there was the one, wasn't there?
Good teams tend to get more penalties. It's worth saying that. Like, good teams attack a lot.
Especially the way Inter play, they get so many players into the box, you know what I mean? And I think Lautaro Martinez is arguably the best in the world at the moment with his back to goal, in terms of, it's not even his back to goal, he's on the half turn, do you know what I mean? He's just so good at bringing teammates into play or taking a touch around the corner and completely getting away from a player, which often is an opponent fouling him on halfway, and that's fine, but you can't get away with it in the box. If he turns you, then you... And Thuram has won an incredible number of penalties as well. And then, unfortunately, we have too many penalties in Serie A because of the ludicrous interpretation of what constitutes a clear and obvious error for handball. And I think almost everything is now handball in Serie A. And we get used to the way we cover it because we watch a lot of it. But I think if you were to actually take those decisions to other leagues, they would probably just be, waved away quite easily. So I don't think it's...
Watching some of the old Deadbeat Italia for the retrospective, there were a few times where I was like, well, that's a handball. And I was like, not back then, it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Things are different.
And I think we should say as well that in terms of Inter's defensive issues against Fiorentina, they were without Hakan Çalhanoğlu and Nicolo Barella. And I think Barella gets around the pitch more than anyone else, and Çalhanoğlu's the one who helps them to keep possession more. And Fiorentina bossed the ball as well. So, and the only other thing I'd say on XG, I'd love to know how that's calculated. I mean, I tried to figure it out. I read Rory Smith's excellent book about it, but I'm still none the wiser, not through any faults of his. But I do wonder whether the penalty is obviously very heavily weighted as an XG, and then it was saved. But I wonder whether the incident leading to the penalty is counted as well when Pavard heads it off the line, because if that counts as well, then actually that's the same passage of play. So if it doesn't count because anything that comes after the penalty which was then given, do you see what I mean? Like, technically, that Pavard clearance didn't actually happen because the penalty was then given for a previous offence, Sommer punching them in the face. And I'm with you, Nicky. I think, what can Sommer do there? If you're a goalkeeper and the ball comes into the box, you come out to punch it. He gets the ball. There's no way of getting the ball and then suddenly changing the angle of his fist so as to miss Nzola's face. If he doesn't punch it, then Nzola just loops the header over him and scores, and Sommer's criticised. I don't really know what you can do there. So I'm at a loss as well. The law says, it's probably dangerous play, so it has to be sanctioned. And of course, you can't go around following through and punching someone in the face. But that would never have been given in the pre-VAR age, because there would have just been, he got the ball first, the follow-through takes him in. I'm not sure. It's so hard to know anymore. You can make an argument for it. I was debating it with the guy who was commentating with Manuel Pascali, who's a defender, and obviously took the defensive side of things. He said, what can you do? If you punch the ball, you win the ball, then how can that be a penalty against you? And so I quite like the poetic justice of then Sommer saying, you know what, I'm just going to save the penalty anyway. I enjoyed that.
Hello Serie A Chronicles listeners, this is producer Simon. Just jumping in here to let you know that is it for this week's free portion of the Serie A Chronicles episode. If you choose to subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi Patreon membership, you will also hear plenty more, about 30 minutes extra, with the team talking about Milan scraping away with a draw despite missing 2 penalties against a Xerxes-inspired Bologna. Why Fiorentina's positive play is not leading to so many more positive results. All about those 5 crazy spot kicks missed this weekend and what Serie A clubs should do about it. Lorenzo Pellegrini popping up with a 2nd consecutive goal in Roma's 2nd consecutive win under new manager Daniele De Rossi. Will Sassuolo be relegated this season, especially with star player Domenico Berardi out injured, as well as our bumper Derby d'Italia preview, and what do the team predict for this match? Who do they think will come out on top? And will it be a Scudetto decider? All that and plenty more. And as already mentioned in this episode, don't miss later in the week a Derby d'Italia special as the team delve into past controversies, dramas and episodes of the historic Derby d'Italia clashes between Juventus and Inter. So to get all those extras 100% ad-free, jump over to seriachronicles.com/Patreon and sign up to the Chronicles Tifosi membership. Over to you, Nikki.
On that note, I'm going to take us into the shout-outs. We've had lots of new Chronicles Tifosi subscribers in recent weeks. Thank you so much for jumping on board. For those of you who are still on the fence, we do have a 7-day free trial available if you want to get on that and hopefully enjoy the extra content we're bringing you guys, like our look back at the historical Derby d'Italia games that we're about to record after this. Please do, Tifosi, if you're listening to this and you are already a subscriber, let us know the content you would like from us. If there's things that we're not doing enough of that you'd like to hear more from us, that's something we'd love to hear from you, because we want to give you guys the content that you are looking for. But for now, shout outs to New Chronicles Tifosi, Jason Gill, Eric, just Eric, Michael Ferrigno, Darren, just Darren, and Rajat Sharma, Adajit Ghosh, and Vegard Berger. Sorry, as always, if I've butchered any of those names.
And I think we have covered absolutely everything, and we've still got plenty to get through on our special bonus feature. I'm really excited already, not only about the bonus feature, but about next week's episode, when we will be breaking down all of match day 23, which features the big one, the Derby d'Italia. But before we sign off today, a reminder to all of our Chronicles Tifosi patrons, join the Chronicles Tifosi chat in the Patreon app. And as ever, you can find us on all sorts of social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. All of the links are in the show notes. This episode was wonderfully hosted by Nikki Bandini, ably assisted by Mina Razuki. I'm Patrick Kendrick. We will see you all very soon. Goodbye.
Yeah, we went over an hour again.
By quite a bit, I think.
Do we get overtime for going 7 minutes beyond the hour?
I think we spent half an hour on just Juve. And
I tried, and then I failed.
It was great. No, I liked it. I think we covered everything, and it didn't sort of creep into the historical look back. I think it's actually going to be quite good.
Sports Social Podcast Network.